Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Lord Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts,
Archlector George.
And Harrison, the Adeptus Historical.
And we continue our coverage of The Heroes, Joe's second standalone, and the next First Law entry, and we cover The King's Last Hero, My Land, and Standard Issue. So let's get started. As you know, we gotta thank you all for your support. For your support. For your support.
All right, I think we'll just leave the thanks for that one. I think they've had enough of that.
Yeah, for real. Don't forget to just follow us on the social medias and just sign up for the YouTube page, please.
Yes. Now, I know this isn't. I know we've had a lot of empty promises here, and you guys care about it so much. But I do actually have some more free time now. I've gotten quite a bit of time off of work permanently as part of my agreement. So I hopefully will be able to have some actual energy to create something.
That's right. Harrison is back on the grind. George, you want anything? You have anything to add?
I still have got some stuff for the works. It's just it's a slow going.
It's very slow. Though, right?
We'll get there.
George is a perfectionist. You could never understand.
Okay. Well, let's move on to our first segment, which is our community interaction segment. Boys, what are we going to talk about? As usual, it's the memeing every chapter, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, there's been a lot more this week. Not necessarily for the memeing every chapter. There've been quite a few, but there's been a lot more memes this week, which is good. Got a lot to pick from.
Nice.
Enough for us to take credit.
Ooh. Driving traffic towards the subreddit?
Oh, it's probably the other way around, actually, thinking about it. But yeah, make sure you go and check out the meme in every chapter on House of the Meme Maker.
Yeah, don't forget. And just, get over there and make a little meme, and engage in the community. Ingratiate yourself into the populace, as we would say. So, let's go on to our first chapter read-through, which is The King's Last Hero. Harrison?
Your August Majesty, darkness has finally covered the battlefield. Great gains were made today. Great gains at great cost. I deeply regret to inform you that the Lord Governor Meade was killed, fighting with the highest personal courage for Your Majesty's cause along his many staff. There is bitter combat from dawn to dusk in the town of Osrong. The event was carried in the morning, and the northern men driven across the river. But they launched a savage counterattack and retook the northern half of the town. Now the water separates the two sides once again. On the western wing, General Miderick has had better fortune. Twice the Northmen have resisted his assaults on the old bridge, but on the third attempt, they were finally broken, and I definitely was not involved in that, and fled the low wall some distance away over the open fields. Miderick is moving his cavalry across the river, ready for an attack at first light tomorrow. From my tent, I can see the standards of Your Majesty's 2nd and 3rd Regiment defiantly displayed on the ground held by the Northmen only a few hours ago. General Jallenholm, meanwhile, has reorganized his division, augmented by reserves from the levy regiments, and is prepared for an attack upon the heroes in overwhelming force. I mean to stay close to him tomorrow, witness his success at first hand, and inform Your Majesty of Blackdown's defeat as soon as the stones are recaptured. I remain Your Majesty's most faithful and unworthy servant, Brave Dangors, World Observer of the Northern War, previous bodyguard of Your Majesty.
That's a really long one.
I was definitely not involved in that. I was reading along, I was like, wait, where's that at? Threw me off. I love it. That was great.
A bit of artistic license there. That's good.
Yeah, love it. It was great. Good job, Harrison. Good job. So yeah, and then he gives the letter to Rugen, while he's in some pain, ribs and whatnot. And then Rugen goes, "Can Younger take this?" And then, actually, no, I'm sorry. Bremer says, "Can Jurgen take this?" And then Rugen calls him, says, like, "Hey, there's a letter." And then Younger comes in, and his face was covered by a large bandage with some dried blood on there. And Gorse is like, "What the fuck happened?" And then he's like, nothing. And Rogan goes, tell him. And it doesn't matter. And then Rogan goes and he just snitches. He goes, Felnig happened, since you ask. And Gorse is like, what? Felnig? Croy's chief of staff? And the younger says, I got in his way. That's all. That's the end of it. And Rogan says, whipped him. And then Gorse is like, whipped you? And that's it. He just grabs his sword, his long steel, and he just starts bucking it over there.
I like how it's not a how are you? It's I'm angry.
He says, an excuse.
And then I like they have like a good relationship in a way because Younger's like, don't do anything stupid, and Gorse just like brushes him and he's like, get the fuck away from me. And then he makes it to the tent where Felnig's he's at and his staff, and there's a guard outside. He's like, can I help you? And then Gorse he just grabs him by the breastplate and just tosses him. And then he runs in. Not runs in, but he bursts into the tent. He's like, Feldig! But then he comes up short because it's a bunch of officers. They're playing cards, drinks, and all this stuff. Smoking some pipes, and then they're there's like side conversations going on and everything. And then slowly, all the officers just kind of turn to look at Gorse, and Gorse is like, uh-oh, I'm not good with crowds. And he's like, I will make Felnig pay, though. I will add. This will add to his humiliation. And then Felnig comes up and he's like drunk. Felnig's like, kind of Gus. Delighted to see you. Just delighted.
Ban, play something more heroic.
and Gorse is like, what? And then Felnig is like, I was at the bridge today, saw the whole thing, crashing through the crops after them, cutting them down like something out of a storybook. And then the guard comes in, and he has the mud and shit on him. He's like, Colonel Felnig, this man. And then Felning just cuts him off. He's like, I know! Bremerdan Goss! I never saw such personal courage. Skillet arms. The man's with the regiment to His Majesty's cause. We're at the division, I swear. And then the guard retreats. And he's like, motherfucker.
And I like how Gorse is just like, yeah, maybe not more than 15 that I killed today. It's like, not more than 15, eh?
It's perfect. I love that, like, it's the total reverse. So he goes in there, he's like, finally an excuse to beat somebody up. He's like, hell yeah. But then in reality, those guys are like they're assholes. But they're assholes who, like, they're like, oh my god, this guy, look, this is the hero. This is a badass. I know this guy. Now they're trying to be buddy-buddy with him. And for the first time in Gorse's life, people are like, hey, I want to be friends with you, you badass. And he's like,
Yeah, I mean, it's that. I think it's like some personal satisfaction at seeing like Miderick failing until somebody like Bremerdan Gorse had to, jump into the fray, because remember, Felnig and Miderick aren't on good terms, at the say the least. And that and then maybe when you're drunk, you're just much more your inhibitions are stripped away. So maybe Felnig, instead of being the politicking kind of guy, he's just drunk and just like, wow, pro-union, baby, look at this guy.
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And so he goes, that bloody idiot Miderick certainly should be thanking you. Look, his fiasco of an attack would have sunk in the river without you. I've already written to my friend Halleck on the close council, told him what a bloody hero you are. They didn't think there was any room for them in the modern age, but here you are, larger than life, baby. And then Bremerdan Gorse is like, oh, it's funny because he goes, I've been telling everyone I can find all about it. And then one of the officers goes, I'll say he has. Like, he probably has to shut the fuck up about it. And then Gorse is like, that is most kind. Thank you. And he goes, what brings you up here anyway? I would be so honored if you have a drink with me. And Gorse just goes, I am here because I heard that earlier today you whipped And in his head, he goes, "My friend, one of my only friends. You're with my friend. Now prepare for your last moments." And he goes, "My servant." And Felnick, he spun around. He's like, "That was your servants? By the, you must accept my apologies." And somebody goes, "You whipped someone?" And like the other guy goes, "And not even at cards?" And Felnick, he goes, "I'm so very sorry. No excuse for it. I was in a terrible rush with the order for the Lord Marshal. No excuse, of course. You must understand. I never had known he was your servant. Of course, I would never have done such a thing."
I wonder if he. So my thought is, I wonder if part of Felnick's stuff is he's horrified that he's going to get murdered by Felnick, by Gorst or something, get beat up. And the other part of it is him being like, "Oh my God, you're important now. So of course, I'm so sorry." Like,
well, don't forget, in his head, Felnick, in his head, when he whipped Younger, he goes, "Fuck, I shouldn't have done that."
Yeah, he does regret it. Like,
he does, but you already know that if it was somebody, Felnick is prideful. If somebody else had came up to him and said, "Hey, you ripped my servant," he would have been like, "I was important business. I'm sorry, but I was important business." And here he's like, "Oh my God!" And I know he's drunk too, but he's like throwing himself on Gorst like mercy. He's like, "Oh, if only I'd known." He said, "If I had known it was your servant." That's the thing that gives it away from me.
yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not like he's going out of his way to apologize, to go and find the guy and go, "Oh shit, sorry about that." You know?
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Like,
No,
whoopsies.
you're right about that. You're right about that. And then in Gorst's head, he goes, "But you did. You chinless satchel shit. Now you will pay. There must be a reckoning, and it will be now. Must be now. Definitely, positively, absolutely bloody now." And then he actually goes and says, "I must ask," but then Felnick cuts him off. He goes, "Please say you'll drink with me. A cheer for Colonel Gorst, the hero of His Majesty's army." And everyone's like, "Ah." And then Gorst finds that he has a glass, and he's sipping, and he's smiling. He's actually enjoying the adulation, as Joe says here.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, in his head, he's thinking about, like, what the fuck? I came in here, like, first of all, today I slaughtered men who had not done me the slightest harm. What horror should I visit upon them? No. He goes, "Here I stand with the man who whipped one of my only friends. And what horror should I visit upon him? Well, just smile and drink his cheap wine." He's like, "What am I going to tell Younger? That he doesn't need to worry about his pain and humiliation? Oh my God, I don't know what to do." And then one of the officers says, "It's certainly a hell of a story the way Felnick tells it. I dare say it's the second bravest thing I've heard about today." And then they're talking about, like, "Oh, I'm talking about the Lord Marshal's daughter." And then Gorst is like, "Finry? What? I thought she was at her father's headquarters." And Felnick goes, "You didn't hear? The damnedest thing. She was with Meade at the inn when the Northmen butchered him and his whole staff. She was taken prisoner. She talked her way free, negotiated the release of 60 wounded men. What do you make of that? More wine?"
No evidence.
I love how they're all talking about these really serious events like it's just like nothing.
Yeah.
It's just like how they're all a bit desensitized to all this shit.
Well, to them, today's a day of victory for them. So they're going to celebrate. You have to remember
I do
that.
have to say, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. If it was like the previous day, then for sure they'd be like, "Motherfuckers." It'd be a lot more somber, right?
Sure.
Right. At least that's what I think. I could be wrong. Gorst kind of like, whenever Finry comes up, his incel penis gets like hard and flaccid at the same time, so he doesn't know what to make of himself. so behold, a bunch of nothingness.
The incel penis.
And so he turns around, he goes past the guard who's staring at him like, "You motherfucker." And Gorst doesn't even, he couldn't even apologize. He just like walks away. And then he sees her. She's standing by a wall by Lord Marshal Croy's headquarters, looking down into the valley. And Gorst, he went to her. And she looks up at him and she's like, "Bremerdan, Gorst, what brings you here?" Very flat voice. And he just, he's running through all these things that he wants to say. You know how he is about Finry. And all he does is he just kind of just says, "I heard that." And she cuts in, she goes, "Yes." And then he's like, there's a bit of a pause, a very uncomfortable one. An exquisitely uncomfortable pause. And he goes, and Gorst goes, "Are you?" And she goes, "Yes. Go on and tell me. tell me how I shouldn't have been down here in the first place. Go on. And all he did is just say, well, you brought men back. You saved lives. You should be proud of it or whatever. And she goes, yes, I'm a real hero. Everyone's proud. Do you know Elise Dan Brent? No. Neither did I, really. Thought she was a fool, if I'm honest. She was with me down there. She's still down there. What's happening to her now, do you think, while we stand here talking? And Gorse doesn't even, like, without really thinking about it, just says, nothing good. And she goes, well, at least you say what you really think. And she just walks away. Jeez, she's not in a good mood.
I like how she says that to him as well, when he says exactly the opposite of what he thinks most of the time.
Right. And then he goes, he thinks that to himself. He goes, oh, yes, I always say what I really think. Would you like to suck my cock, by the way, please? Or a tongue in the mouth? A hug would be something. Hold hands.
He's so
No?
gross.
Anyone?
He is really fucking gross, isn't he? He's really fucking...
This whole fucking time, he's like, somebody's like, oh, so-and-so. And instead of him being like, oh, man, that sucks. I should go comfort that person who must have been through some terrible thing. He's like, opportunity to take advantage of somebody. Stop it.
Well, that's the end of that chapter. So, boys, how do you rate it?
So, you guys know I'm not a huge Gorse fan, so it's hard for me to give the chapters a high rating. But I really appreciate what is being done here, because again, it's like he kind of taunts. It's kind of like the opposite of Logan, right? In a certain way, how you think Logan's kind of a good guy, and you're like, oh no, he's slipping into the bad behavior. For some reason, Gorse, whenever I read it, and I hate that Joe's able to do this, I keep thinking that he's gonna do something good for goodness sake, and not because he's fucked up. And every single time I'm disappointed, and I equally love that, and also find it super frustrating. So I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 9, because I love what he's doing, but God, I hate Gorse. It's just so annoying.
I am only going to give it a 6 as well, because it is rather short. I enjoy Gorse as a character. I don't like him as a person, obviously, but he's just so up and down and funny to read. And obviously, it's funny just to see him wilt completely. Like, he's like marching up to that tent, like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then, I'm confronted by people having a good time. Oh, God. all of my resolve has crumbled.
I'm gonna give it a 6 and a knuckle. I enjoyed it because of Gorse. What you were just talking about, right? With like his friend is has been struck down by a man in power, and Gorse shall make him pay. Never mind, he will take the toast to his bravery. Then he goes and sees Finray. He goes, I will be there to comfort her. And then he doesn't know what to say. But then he's like a little honest with her, and she's like, well, she gives him some praise, and he's like, well, would you please suck my pee-pee? And then there's nothing that happens there. So I will give it a 6 and a knuckle. I enjoyed that chapter. It was short, but yeah, I thought it was like pretty good. Like a little bit extra characterization of Gorse, which is always nice to see.
And it does work really well for just before we move on. It works really well for the characterization of the characters in these books, where everything is in a certain rhythm. So there's the morning, and you see people getting set up, and then in what they do in the battle, and what they do afterwards. So there's this sort of like ebb and flow to it. So I like even in these like quieter moments, there's still stuff going on, and it's not all just them sitting around going thinking about stuff,
Right. No, you're right about that. So that's our first chapter read through. We'll move on to our next segment. Now, before we move on to our next segment, since it's the host of this next segment, we should note that at the day of this recording, it is George's birthday.
Oh.
So we say happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to George.
Happy birthday to you.
Oh, thanks, guys. That's lovely.
And if the rest of you guys don't sing it, just don't even listen to the podcast. You guys are assholes.
Turn off this episode if you don't sing along. All right, now we shall move on to our next segment, which is Best Meme of the Week. Georgie boy, birthday boy, that's a you. Take it away.
So this week we have a couple of times winner, I think, of Meme of the Week. Got Churlish Crambungle. Do you remember him, guys? Churlish Crambungle.
Oh, yeah, Churlish. I remember Churlish.
Yeah. So he's posted a fucking banger here, obviously, with all of the stuff with Donald Trump winning and being inaugurated. There's been all sorts of hilarious fucking clips, mostly hilarious anyway. So there's this that stupid fucking bit where he's waving his sword around and YMCA is playing in the background. It's archival footage showing Leo Dan Brock moments before his ill-fated charge of Stoffenbach.
It feels so accurate.
It does.
You should definitely watch.
The YMCA and the silly sword and the hair. It's just perfect. Oh my god, that is absolutely hilarious. Oh, so yeah, that'll be down in the link in the description of this episode. So thank you very much for that, Churlish Grandboggle.
Thanks. So move on to our next chapter read through, which is My Land. Let's do it my way. I'm still a little hungover, folks. So.
Or if it's not my, it's like from Dune. Myrak is my Dune. My North. My land.
Yeah.
My Osrog.
So we are looking at this from the perspective of our boy Calder. And Calder is walking around Clail's wall. He's, just thinking about everything. His dead father, dead brother. Deep and Shadow are there. Deep goes, well, what happened up there? And he just says, I made a mistake, got into some fighting. Whatever. And they say, are you going to fight tomorrow? He goes, well, I am, actually. There's no choice at this point. Deep and Shallow, like, fuck that. We're about to... Let's get out of here. We could be 10 miles away. And Calder goes, no. He couldn't run. The Calder 10 years ago, who'd ordered the Forley the weakest killed without a second thought, would have been galloping off on the fastest horse he could steal. But now he had Seth, an unborn child. If he stayed to pay for his own stupidity, Dow would probably stop at ripping him apart, but spare Seth. So, there you go.
He's changed, Al Calder.
He's changed. He's changed a little bit. And Deep and Shallow, I said Shadow. It's Shallow. Deep and Shallow. Why don't you just correct me? You get this.
because it was funny. And everybody would be like, hey, look what Jeffrey said. Look what Jeffrey said. It would have been more painful.
You got something. So, anyway, even though Deep and Shallow are trying to convince him to, like, hey, let's just leave, he goes, nah. But he couldn't run because fuck him. Fuck Ten Ways and Golden and Ironhead and Dow and Craw. Fuck them all. Anyway, they're saying to him that, like, we can't watch over you if you're going to be in the middle of a battle. But then then he walks over to see Pale and Snow and White Eye Hansel. They're like, oh, look, it's our noble leader, the punching prince. So they're he said, Calder thanks Pale as Snow of, like, drawing, for drawing his sword with him. He goes, yeah, for a moment up there, you reminded me of your father. And then I remembered how it felt to follow a man that I admire. And then Calder goes, I wouldn't get used to that feeling. And then Pale as Snow goes, don't worry, it's gone already.
Savage.
So, and then Calder kind of, like, he gets up on the wall and he's, like, looking down to where the Midoric's troops are. And he sees that they have two tall flags up there, the standards. And he's like, man, it's weird that they're very easy to see. And then he realized, oh, they're lit up, like, on purpose, like display, show of strength, all that. And then he thinks back to what his father would tell him, which is that it's easy to see the enemy of one of two ways: as some implacable, terrifying, unstoppable force that can only be feared and never understood, or some block of wood that doesn't think, doesn't move, a dumb target to shoot your plans at. But the enemy is neither one. He's you, that he's no more and no less of a fool or a coward or a hero. And if you can imagine that, you won't go too far wrong.
That's a really, really good bit of advice, isn't it?
Damn.
Yeah, Bethod, he's that dude. Can
you imagine, like, back whenever Bethod, in, like, the first couple of years that Bethod and Logan around each other, what, like, intellectual conversation they would be having? I know Logan's not the kind of person to not be someone who would just talk about things. Maybe he doesn't have the same computing power to, like, say his own things, but man, that's why Bethod liked talking. Bias liked talking to him, because he, like, was comprehending what he was saying and following along and had things to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
And Bethod was one smart motherfucker, Jesus, especially for the time, like in the region.
Yeah, exactly.
But-
He came up as this sort of like nothing chieftain from the I'm presuming like really far north, like out of nowhere, and just managed to do all this shit, even though he had Logan helping him with the jewels and that. But
he's still the one who pieced it together. He's still the one who cleared the fields to build the farms and the roads, and even now that everybody's still like, I don't know, Bethel was kind of cool. Everybody now, after having blacked out and charged for 8 years.
Well, not only that, but they're the people that didn't like Bethod were the people that Bethod had to conquer, right?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
that was everyone. Pretty much.
Well, I will not suffer this Bethod slander. All right, you shut up.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but that's how he started. If he was going to start with like nobody, just on his with his own men, and then he had to conquer all these other chieftains.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He definitely would have been.
But even Dow has a grudging respect for him, even though all the way throughout the first trilogy,
They all
he's
did.
like
they hated him, but they're like, he's smart. He's smart.
Yeah.
So he asked Pale Snow, "Where's White Eye?" He goes, "Oh, he's over there by the fires, keeping men's spirits up. Probably telling them the story about how you punched 10 ways in the face." But Calder's also thinking about what Scalehead said, that this is the North, and sometimes you just have to fight. So that he asked Pale Snow, he's like, "That's Midoric, right?" He goes, "Yeah, And then Calder goes, Dow had told me he's sharp but reckless. He was reckless enough today. And then Calder goes, that worked for him in the end. And men tend to stick to what works. He loves horses, I heard, and I like how Pale Snow goes, what, like, loves them? And he does, like, rhyming, like, fucking them.
So dumb.
And he goes, and Calder goes, maybe that too. But I think fighting on them was more the point. He goes, yeah, well, that's good ground for horses, flat. Maybe he thinks he'll ride all over us tomorrow. And then Calder goes, maybe he will. And then he thinks back about the order that he came across by leader leather lover is dead corpse. Lingleberry. My men and I are giving our all. And he says, reckless, arrogant, vain, which is what men said about Calder. So that works. So it gives him a little bit of insight. So he goes, I have an idea.
Which is perfect because he's like, Joe does such these lines of thinking so well. Like, and sometimes in a book, you're like, somebody has an idea and you're like, cool, but like, where the fuck did you come up with that shit? He's already thinking about how his dad said your enemy is just like you, and so his mind starts thinking about that. And I think that's clever how Joe writes that part of it.
Definitely, there's such a trope with smart characters or quote unquote smart characters where they're just like, the plot everything seems like everything's gone wrong. And it's like, aha, but I pulled this out of my ass and I didn't tell anyone about it.
Right. No, but yeah,
and that makes them look clever, but you never really follow along with it. Whereas Joe almost always writes it like this, where it's you come to the conclusion at the same rate as the character does.
Yeah, exactly. And he does. He goes. Well, now he starts to smirk and he goes, I want you to get your best men together. No more than a few score. Just enough to keep together and work quickly at night. Because we're not going to beat the Union moping back here, and I don't think some farmer's boundary mark is going to keep them out either. And he smiles and he goes, now you're reminding me of your father again. And he goes, what about the rest of the lads? And he goes, get wide-eyed to round them up because they got some digging to do. And that's the end of that chapter. Boys, how do you rate it?
I really like this one. I like Calder starting to turn a page here. I like the fact that it's referenced that Deep and Shallow got Calder very drunk, so that he said that stupid thing that drives the plot forward. That might come up again later, but
did I skip something? What are you talking about?
It was like in the beginning there. It says that something that led him to the decision to say that to Craw. It was a bit of Deep and Shallow's cheap booze.
Oh.
So it's the spoilers for now, but I wonder if that comes up again.
I think he was just getting hammered because he was mourning Scale. The death of Scale.
Yeah, of course.
Of course,
it could have been a little bit stronger than it was meant to be. Maybe I don't know. So I really like Calder starting to turn a page here and sort of faces what he's been kind of running away from everything. He never went to fight because he thought there might be people there, or there might not be, or he's just been umming and ahhing and not really making decisions at all this whole book. So to see him go, right, I know what I got to do now. I really like that. So I'm gonna give this one a 7 and a knuckle.
Ooh, 7 and a knuckle. Okay, Harrison.
I think I'm also gonna give it a 7 on knuckle. Same reasons you've laid it out perfectly, George. I'm a big Bethod fanboy. He's such a unique character inside of like this kind of world, and I love the kind of the reverence that's shown it with it, and it's cool. Like you said, it's very cool to see Colders like start to use some of the potential. It's so interesting in his own mind. One of the reasons that he believed he could never step into his own is because he was always under his brother's shadow or Bethod's shadow, which is not really true. But to his own, he's placeboed himself into thinking that because now he's actually trying to do more, and I think that's, I think it's kind of tragic because he does love his brother, but it's also like he was right in his own mind that that's what he needed for him to actually feel like he could do something, even if it's not the reality. So. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I mean, if Scale was here in this chapter, he'd be like, "What are you talking about digging trenches? That's stupid."
We'll find out what's going on.
That's true, but he's had other opportunities, you know.
We'll find out what's going on. We'll find out in a minute. We'll find out. I really like this chapter. Here's the thing. I almost want to judge this chapter and the next one as one cohesive one because it flows really well for me. But I guess I'll hold off. So in the meantime, I like the. You just bear with me. I am gonna grade it like short chapter. Nothing happens. We just see Calder formulating something, a plan. So for now, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 9 fingers. But you shall see. You shall see.
Okay.
So we'll move on to our next segment, which is our character spot. Boys, who are we spotlighting today?
Well, none other than Gorse boys, who a lot of characters. He's like Glocta. Glocta's boys. These are Gorse boys.
They're his practicals.
His goons.
That word has been ruined now, but yes, that's what they are. They're his goons.
Wait, why has it been ruined?
No, they literally are his servants. They are his servants. They're just also his friends, or at least Gorse sees them as friends. I wonder how they see Gorse, but Gorse seems to treat them well.
Yeah, I think they see him as friends too. Remember, he goes like, "Don't do it." Like, you don't talk to someone that your quote unquote your master is. Don't do anything stupid if you don't have a pretty good relationship with him.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's just interesting to see. I wonder why Gorse allows himself to be friends with his servants.
Allows himself more like he needs somebody.
Well, I know, but isn't it really though that he allows himself to have these friends?
I mean, sure, but the boy has no friends.
Yeah. Anyways, Rogan and Younger. The names are kind of funny. Younger is literally it's spelled exactly the same. We're not saying it weird. It's not YUNGER. No, it's spelled Younger. It's spelled exactly like that. So anyway.
Rogan and Younger makes me think of like a lawyer's firm or something. Partners of Rogan and Younger. Attorneys at law.
Oh god, yeah, I could see that.
It's perfect, Jeff. It's perfect. We don't know much about them. They do seem like some sweet dudes. They have a good master. They seem to be very loyal to Gorse, and they seem to care about him and want to do stuff. And and it does seem like Gorse does actually get mad because his friend was hurt, but then he kind of drops the ball.
What would it be like having to spar with him every day, though, as well? You saw in the first few chapters there when Younger's got all that padding on and he's just there with a stick. Like, don't hit me, please hit me.
But remember, I think Gorse is actually also, like, he's weighted down. He's given, he lets them both come. Yeah.
Whereas they're not actually sparring. It'd be quite funny, wouldn't it? Just beating the shit out of both of them on the tail. All right, lads, same tomorrow.
It would be hilarious. Oh yeah.
Yeah, they seem like cool guys, Rogan and Younger. They do. You want to add to that character spot, or were you good with that?
It's good. Like you say, it's good that it's funny that Gorse never thinks about them really, even though they could be his friends. Probably, if he really wanted some that badly.
I don't know if he never thinks of them, but
he never thinks.
He never thinks about them unless they're there in the room or with him.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. All right.
And we never see them again, probably. So,
I don't think that's true though. I could be wrong. So we'll start day 3 now with our next chapter read through, and I was gonna read the quote, but Harrison, do you like to read the quote?
I'm not sure how much violence and butchery the readers will stand. Robert E. Howard.
for anyone that's wondering, Harrison said it like that because I mentioned that Robert E. Howard was from Texas. So, and also the author of the beloved fantasy series Conan the Barbarian.
Hence the battle axe on the actual day 3 page. Joe's brain is a wonderful place.
Yeah,
I've been there.
And so the next page is an updated map of the Valley of Osrung. And so we see some changes. Valamir's still on the west, with Tunney and them on the west, on the flank of the Northmen. Calder's men are at Clail's Wall with Tenways next to him at Scarling's Finger, and they're also holding it. Dow's still at the Heroes with Ironhead up front and center. Golden is kind of like in the rear a little bit, and Ricci has the northern half of Osrung. And then Stranger Come Knocking, we see he's on the east side next to Heron Farm. And so, and then going from west to east again, Valamir in the west, like I said, we have Midoric's troops in front of Calder. They've crossed the bridge, the old bridge, and now they're by the Stoll Farm. That's where kind of like they're taking up residence. We have unnamed troops at Adween. We have Jallenhorn in the center, across the river from Ironhead. Croy is a little bit back by Blackfell. That's where his headquarters is. We have Hal Danbrock. He has the southern half of Osrung, and the inn as well. And Brent and Dogman they're across the field from Stranger Come Knocking's troops, so they're keeping them at bay. That's kind of how they're illustrated. So that's the updated map so far. Do you have any notes about that before I start the chapter read through, boys?
It's interesting to see like how open Croy's headquarters was before they swiveled to turn to the forest. Like if you look at the second map, they're all like focused on Osrung, and Stranger Come Knocking could have literally just crossed that hill there and gone and taken out Croy.
No, you're right.
Well, maybe they don't. They said they didn't know where the Dogman was, and the Dogman's the one who found them and drove them off. So maybe the Dogman was in those hills because he was trying to watch the flank because he thought that Stranger Come Knocking would attack further in, and he assumed that Governor Meade would have scouted the woods to the east, but he did not. Also, I would assume Croy also assumed that Meade would have covered the whole flank and at least made sure to watch his flank. He did not.
He did not. No.
But it is interesting to see how how Tinways, how close he would have been able to help scale the day before as well. I know we kind of looked at that other map and how he would have been able to help, but like he's so within striking range. If they were just crossing the bridge, he could have totally swung down. Him and Calder both could have attacked at the same time and pushed him back, no doubt.
Yeah, but that didn't happen. So
yeah, it didn't happen. Coulda, woulda, shoulda,
And honestly, the inn is still super vulnerable, where Meade's Shattered Division is, because there's just a stream between him and Ironhead.
True, and Golden's cavalry as well.
Yep.
It's an interesting one. I love the fact that Joe gives us these maps for this.
We love
it. Really does. We love maps, and because the setting up of this takes. It's over several chapters, and then in several chapters in advance as well. It's good to give just a little reminder of where everyone is and what everyone's doing.
Very true, very true. Love maps. Thanks, Joe, for actually giving us a map. Appreciate it.
Even though it's probably like 5 square miles.
Yeah, for real. So we start our next chapter read through, our final one, which is the standard issue, and we're back in Calder's perspective, and basically. They're creepy crawling through the field now. Him and Pale of Snow, and I think White Eye's with them, right?
Yeah, they're all together.
Yep. And Calder's nerves are fucking frayed, whereas Pale of Snow is just chill. He's relaxing. This is not a big deal. And so they're in like what would you call it, like the barley? It was like all the barley and stuff. So that they're crawling through there towards Midoric's army. And this is still the dead of night, right? And so they're creepy crawling. The wind is, whipping up, but Pale Snow notes that, it masks the sound of them crawling. And Pale Snow thinks, like, if we're chill, right? If we're like cold, imagine what the Union men are feeling like, because they're not used to this, right? Because we're Northmen, we get that. So, and Pale Snow, Calder goes, I expected war to be terrifying, but I didn't know it'd be so goddamn boring because they're just waiting. And it's like, listen, just be patient, be patient. So
I like what Pale Snow says here as well. As patience is as fearsome a weapon as rage. More so, in fact, because fewer men have it.
Damn.
I think that's it. That goes hard.
It does go hard. Fear men
That's
have
very
it.
true. Very true. And somebody, he goes, Chief. Calder spins around, he's like, who the fuck? And then he remembers, like, oh wait, I'm Chief, right? Of this. And then so the newcomer says, okay, we're in the trenches, and we sent a few Union boys back to the mud. And then Pale Snow asks him, like, were they like alert? And he goes, no, they were just sleeping.
Oh.
Oh, that's great. Imagine that. And he's like, all right, so shall we? So they're like, all right. So now they're crawling again. And then they were, he's breaking through all the barley, and then finally he broke through just another set, and then sees the standards right ahead. Like it kind of like there was a bit of a clearing, and they're like 20 strides away, and then he sees like it's the standards of the regiments. I forget which regiments are there. Harrison, do you remember the second and the third? I think it is.
It is. Sorry, the chapter's so small. I'm like, I feel like an idiot.
I don't think it's mentioned in this chapter, obviously, because it's from Calder's perspective. But
we do get something soon. I'm not sure they know. They just see the standards.
It just says that they both have suns on them.
Right. Okay. Well, not a big deal.
How many suns?
Just the one sun, sir.
So they're thinking. So Calder sees the standards. He hears the horses in the darkness, just thinking about like oh man, they're gonna come charging across that field pretty soon. And he sees that a pair of guards have flanked the standards. And Pale Snow goes like, "What do we go?" And he looks at those guards and he's thinking about Mercy. He's like, none of them seem the slightest bit ready for what's coming, and he kind of feels bad, right? He's thinking about they might have families, they might have wives. So he's like, fuck it, we go. And so he doesn't even know what's happening because Pale Snow makes like a gesture with his hand, and then they both just had their throats cut. The guards, they just killed over.
Shit.
So they had like a couple guys, Northerners, just sneak around them, and then then Northmen broke from the crops, right? And then they're just like harrowing the lines. It looks like, and then but they're also going to try to take the standards. And there's like 3 Union soldiers that are struggling with the tent because they had crept across open ground. And then another Union soldier who has a flat bow, he kind of goes, "You." And they're kind of he's confused because he's like, "What the fuck are you guys doing here?" And then Calder goes, "Ah." And then Pale Snow goes, "Shit." And the soldier goes, "Who are you?" And then next thing you know, he gets a fucking arrow in his chest. And then some of the horses startled. And now it's a bit chaotic a little bit, right? Because Union men are kind of coming into the light with like, "What's going on here, folks? What's going on here?" And so now it's like, okay, now they got to do what they got to do, right? So they snatch the standards. They cut down some more Union men real quick. And then, then they run back to the barley, right? And there's like, some more arrows flitting past or whatever. And then, he goes, wait, be quiet. Let's listen. And then we just hear that there are voices around them, but it's Northern voices. And then they're like, "Where's Hale? Did we get the bloody flags? Those bastards wouldn't even know which way to look. Go, dead. Caught an arrow. We got him. They're dragging the bloody horses around." He's just hearing Northern voices around. So he's like, okay. We're actually pretty cool. We're pretty cool. And then somebody goes, "I bet those Union guys thought we had nothing to say about it." And then somebody goes, "But Prince Calder had something to say." And Calder likes to hear that somebody said his name, and Pale Snow is smiling too. And then Pale Snow has one of the standards in his fist because he snatched them.
Yeah.
And then and then somebody else felt a poke in Calder felt a poke in his side, looks, and somebody else had the other standard and was offering it to Calder. And it's like they're all like smiling and laughing, and it was like a quick little operation. Probably not the biggest thing, but it makes them feel good. It's a morale booster right here, right?
Oh yeah.
And then the guy says again, like, he says Prince Calder, and he's obviously offering it to Calder. He's offering him the flag again, and he goes, "Well, I'm no prince. I'm the king of the fucking Union." And then Pale Snow is holding up the other standard, and he goes, "Oh, hail His fucking Majesty, King Bloody Calder." And he just keeps smiling because he liked the sound of that. And that's the end of that chapter. Now, I will jump in, and as a one cohesive chapter from the previous one just nice big full segment, I'm going to add this up to make it an 8 out of 9 fingers.
Okay.
Really enjoyed it because we saw the plan formulating in his head, like you said, George. Like we could see it. It even wasn't explicitly said, right? The whole kind of like show don't tell kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now we kind of see like, wait, he keeps noting the flags. He wants the boys to get ready right now, and then we see the actual plan in action here. So, in totality, I'll give it an 8 out of 9. Boys, what do you rate it?
Well, I might give this one a 6 on its own, because I think I did 6 last time or 5 last time.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like this chapter as well. I love how it really like highlights how the chain of command really works, because somebody comes up with the ideas and then somebody makes sure that they actually happen because they know how to do it. So seeing Pale as Snow give the orders that Calder has given him, and then he doesn't even know who he's given it to or who Pale as Snow has given it to. I really like that, because that's pretty accurate. Like you don't know everyone down the chain of command.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think it's very funny. I think it's funny. So 6.
Ooh,
6.
Spicy. Harrison?
Man, I really like how tactical this chapter is, because we get to see like his, like you guys said, his plan coming into fruition, and him being, this is kind of stuff that Bethod would definitely do. And I really like too how the Northmen see it. Like there's something really tragic about how like these men who are still basically loyal to Bethod, how they see a glimpse of that, or whenever they saw it with Scale, and they felt like they were about to have be in the glory of the North, where that could have been, and that's in their mind at least. And it's kind of tragic that they're like that, but also it's really like, it feels really good that they're like, hey, look, Prince Calder, let's fucking go. Like we did something cool, we did something clever, like we used to. Anyways, I like that aspect a lot, so I think I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 9, to be honest.
Oh yeah, okay, that's good. All right, well, thank you for that, boys. That's our show, everyone. We want to thank you all for listening and supporting this podcast. As you know, this is a passion project for the 3 of us, and your support means so much.
Join us next week as we cover Shadows, Under the Wing, and Names.
And make sure you follow us on all of our social media, check out the website, and shoot us an email at circletheworldpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And please make sure to rate and review us. Thank you all again for listening.
That is most kind.